Hey guys, Buckeye Bar guys. We wanted to thank you guys for tuning in to us here on Buckeye Bar Talk. Great show we got coming up today. We're really looking forward to you guys listening and watching it. But just wanted to remind everybody, just remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the all notifications bell, and that way, anytime a new show comes up, you guys will be alerted to it. And don't forget to like the video and comment on the video. All interactions with us helps us continue to grow, and we appreciate your support. Now to the show.
Welcome back, everybody, to Buckeye Bar Guys here on Buckeye Bar Talk. I'm Mike.
And I'm John.
Today's date is December 22nd, 2023, and we are going to do our little, we just wanted to go through a quick little show talking about the signing day that just happened a couple days ago, and just our thoughts, our feelings, just everything that was going on. It was a little bit dramatic this year with the signing day press conference. Ryan Day seemed pretty somber when he started it. Obviously, there was still a lot of questions about Jeremiah Smith and Edric Houston. Smith, even though he doesn't sign, did commit during the press conference. So there was a big sigh of relief on Ryan Day's face with that one. The actual letter did come in later on in the evening, and then Ryan Day had to leave the press conference as Gene Smith told him he had a phone call he had to take. And it seems like everything was Edric Houston calling him to tell him that he was keeping his commitment, as we found out at the end of the press conference that Houston was signed. So overall, I thought it was a pretty good class. I mean, it's top 10 class, a lot of what we come to expect from from Ohio State. Well, we lost a couple guys heading into signing day. Obviously, we lost McKellen on signing day as he ended up going to Oregon. But overall, I mean, when you thought you could have lost McKellen and Houston, and there was still a threat out there with Jeremiah Smith, Miami was really breathing hard down the neck. You can't be too disappointed with it. I know there was a lot of the fan base, us included, you kind of live and die with all this stuff. And as all the emotional roller coaster was going up and down on, signing day and the days leading up to signing day, I mean, we were texting back and forth, and, we were having some outbursts between the two of us about how things were going and stuff like that. And then at the end of the day, it's a pretty good class. And, considering it's still only 20 kids, and I know the classes in front of them have more signed, but Ohio State had more 5-stars than anybody else, pretty much. And, so you can't really argue about it, in my opinion.
No, I totally agree with you. And Jeremiah McClellan, I mean, that's just, Oregon's there. He can go be a number one at Oregon. I mean, I don't blame him at all for his decommitment. It's a hard room to, get going early at Ohio State. Also, when you have two St. Louis receivers from the past that are talking in his ear that, you don't want to get buried in Brian Hartline's room. I mean, that carries some weight. So I can't be disappointed with him. I mean, I'm disappointed because I think he's a great player. But I can't fault him for his decisions. Yeah, I'd agree with you, though. You got to be happy, right? The star ratings are great. You probably would love to see some more numbers, and definitely at specific places, which we'll get into. But offensive line recruiting, like we've talked about in the past, I mean, that's okay to take developmental stuff. I think offensive line, like if you get someone that's plug and play immediately, I mean, that's awesome. Your goal should really be like someone that can contribute significant time in year 2. So hopefully we got some of those guys in this class. But outside of areas we'll talk about, maybe you like to see more safeties because we employ 3 of them. But now I think we might be going more so like a third cornerback. So, Tim Walton had a really strong recruiting class, helped out, of course, by having, a 5-star and borderline 5-star cornerback out of the state of Ohio. I I'm happy though. You held on to Houston, you held on to Jeremiah Smith. Those were really the two showcase guys the entire time for this class. And I know Justin Scott ended up, being ranked higher composite than what Edric Houston was. But Edric Houston was the big get, from the defensive side of the ball. Jeremiah Smith was the big get for the offensive side of the ball. And you ended up closing on both of them. And Aaron Noland, you kept, once Dylan Raiola left, you got Aaron Noland relatively quickly after. You kept him throughout the process. Losing a running back hurt, but you still got, a really talented one in Peoples. And then you have a project from I'll have to look up his name. I apologize. It's escaping me. The one from Ohio, though, from Pickerington North.
Yeah. I think.
But yeah, I mean, I'm happy with it. There are some disappointments. We'll talk about
Williams Dixon.
Thank you. We'll talk about the big disappointment here in a little bit, but all in all, you gotta be happy.
Yeah. With the McKellen stuff, I mean, obviously, I really wanted it in the class. That would have been, another, 3 spectacular wide receivers. But out of the 3 that they could lose, I honestly, I think he was probably the one that I'm okay with seeing go, because I think Graham is. I think he brings in some of that stuff that they've missing the last couple years.
Exactly. Skill set, like McClellan, excuse me. You can live without it, and I apologize for cutting you off. Graham's speed and separation that is something that's been missing the last 2 years.
Yeah. And then obviously you want Jeremiah Smith. I mean, a lot of people think he's going to be a starter possibly day one between him and Tate and Ennis, and then you throw in a guy like Graham and maybe a couple of the Rogers and stuff like that. And obviously the room is solid. So I definitely, I know I'm not the only person to have said this. Kind of when I see Graham, I kind of see a little bit of Paris Campbell and a little bit of that in him. Mm-hmm. And I think that shiftiness and speed is just kind of what they've been missing for, I mean, they've had some speed, they've had some hitters, they've had some of that stuff. It's just a different type of player. And they really haven't had that one since that class left, when you had kind of like Campbell and McLaurin and all those couple of those guys that could do a couple different things.
I would say Olave and Wilson could do that stuff.
I think they could, but I think they were even better, though, still down the field. I don't think that – I think he could be really good at is just kind of when you think about that you think about the end around that Campbell has against Michigan, and and I think it just brings some of that stuff back to the team that I don't know if they quite had completely, over the last few years. But I mean, and that, again, it's not saying anything bad against anybody. It's just everybody has a slightly different skill set, and I don't know if we've had completely this skill set for a minute. So I like that. I think that he'll do good things there. Obviously, yes, losing Lyle sucked, but if you were listening to a lot of the recruiting experts coming down the stretch, I mean, it was expected. I mean, it's holding on to it's like holding on to the Florida kids, the South Florida kids is, it's a different project. And
unless it's a receiver, I don't know if it's worth going into.
Yeah. And even that, I mean, even though Jeremiah Smith, I mean, he held the whole time. I think part of it was he was having a little fun too. But Miami was pushing hard for him at the end of the day too. So, it's just hard to get those. It's like we always talk about, it's hard to getting defensive linemen out of the South and stuff like that. It is just hard getting those skill kids out of South Florida. Miami, I mean, people can say what they want about Miami, and yes, there's NIL involved in everything, but they also they have a reputation, a history there of, having very good skill guys. And, when you have all your family kind of talking in your ear, you could be the next, this guy or the next Michael Irvin, and, next, I'm blanking on the 2002 wide receiver's name, and, different things like.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's, Andre.
Yeah, Andre Johnson.
I'm like, he played forever in the league.
Yeah. So and Soteris Moss and a couple of those guys, it just, you kind of get that thing. And then you think the same thing with the running backs when you got the Gores and the McGahees and all the way down the line. It's just all those kids all grew up together in the same area, you know, and they're all, you know, so, you know, they know these guys growing up in these high schools and stuff like that. And so it's just it's just kind of hard to turn that down. And so I think that's why it's just so hard to get kids out of there when the U also wants them.
Yeah, I mean that's a big deal for their families and you know, playing for the U or playing for Florida State, that it's hard to get. I mean, imagine like top Ohio kids that it's hard to get them away from Ohio State because their families love Ohio State. That's what they grew up loving. So,
Oh yeah, I mean, you've seen how many Ohio State kids over the years that Ohio State wasn't necessarily in on them, and they commit somewhere else. So then the minute, you know, a week before signing day, the minute that Ohio State's like, yeah, I want you in the class, and it's like they completely forget all about the being snubbed and stuff like that. Yep, I'm committing right now, and like
for sure, and it's that's just how it is. I mean, that's why people say that like USC, Texas, and Miami should never be bad. Like they just they have better skill players there because they play football year round, you know, and it's such a big brand that their families grew up loving that they should just easily be able to get those kids in. So, I mean, it's a hard sell, even if NIL wasn't involved. And I don't know what these guys are promised, what they're not. I mean, you hear things from all the OSU insiders, you know, that, oh, well, they gave Mark Fletcher $2 million or whatever. Like, I don't know if there's any truth to that. If they did, I mean, they thought he was worth it, I guess. I don't know. But still, even then, it's a hard sell when it's like everyone's telling you, hey, man, you got to go to Miami. We're going to turn this around. And that's his team, you know?
yeah, definitely agree. All right, so offensively, just kind of like, so I think quarterback position's a win. I think the wide receiver position's a win. I like where they did on tight end.
That Witten's going to be good. I just don't know. Like his frame's going to be weird, but if you can get the next Jimmy Graham, I mean, you take that any day of the week.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And so I definitely I think tight end's probably on a win. I would say I'm okay right now with the offensive line, and I'm okay right now with the running back room. But I think they need to add people in both spots in the transfer portal. Especially if Trey doesn't come back. And if Trey does come back, you're still behind kind of the 8 ball with all the players that left. And, you know, I mean, you'd only really, you'd have Trey, Dallin, and the 2 kids that they brought in here, and one is a developmental guy. So, you know, you're only really thinking that maybe Peoples could possibly contribute next year if push comes to shove. But I would rather find some sort of kind of plug and play guy in the portal there. You know, to, you know, help with, if Trey does come back, help with him and Dallin. And if Trey doesn't come back, you know, him and Dallin, the new kid and Dallin, new guy and Dallin. And then kind of, you know, that these 2 guys, maybe Peoples can give you something, you know, probably the other guy, probably not for another year or 2, you're assuming. So I think that's kind of where I'm at. That the offensive line, I mean, obviously we didn't get Seaton coming down the stretch. So, you know, that was a wild recruitment. So
yeah, no doubt. He's still out there.
Yeah. Like, I'm kind of disappointed in still some of that stuff. I mean, the offensive line recruitment is, I mean, I like what's his face out of Indiana. I like the Armstrong. I like the Armstrong twins. I think they could develop into something. But, you know, again, those are a couple of years probably down the road. So I definitely think they probably need to find somebody in the transfer portal that can play opposite of Simmons, because I think Simmons has proven himself now. He's a tackle, and I think they need to find another tackle, because I think Fryer's probably better at guard. And I think
you got to remember they do have Luke Montgomery.
They do have Montgomery, but I still think you need to have at least a 4th tackle somewhere in the room that can play. I mean, you got to almost have 7, 8 guys that you're pretty confident in playing, because, you know, injuries happen on the offensive line. Right. And so that is not any stretch of an imagination that one of your offensive linemen is going to go down, whether it's for a couple plays or for a game or for a season. I mean, that happens when with how much those guys get rolled up on top of each other. So I mean, they definitely need somebody there. So I like where the quarterback position's at. I like where obviously the wide receiver position's at. I like where the tight end position's at. I think they need to add a couple pieces with both the running back room and the offensive line.
Yeah, I'd agree with that offensively.
All right, so defensively, we talked about Edric Houston. Very happy that they they ended up sealing the deal on that one. Obviously corner position. I mean, Tim Walton knocked it out of the park, and so I mean, that guy has completely rebuilt the room into what we expect out of him. And so we're kind of just waiting on Hancock there. If Hancock decides he's coming back, I mean, I know there's a possibility Burke's coming back. I still think even with a second round grade, and I think he'll play into the first round before draft day. I just don't see how he is a second rounder. Like, I mean, nobody even attempted to challenge him this year. And to me, like, sometimes that's why these grades things kind of drive me nuts. I'm like NFL GMC stuff like that. It's like, okay, nobody threw the ball at him. That has to mean something.
I mean, at the combine, if everything's looking right, or during his pro day, as long as, hips are fluid and he's doing the cone drills quickly, or, everything's going right, the vertical's good, like, he's gonna be a first round draft pick. Because the NFL's funny. I mean, once a position starts getting hot and like people get scared that they're going to lose the next one, so they go and they'll reach for a guy. Not that I think Burke's a reach, but I just don't see if it starts rolling out that all the Bama cornerbacks are getting drafted. Like, I just think he'll be next because they'll want to make sure someone will want to make sure they grab him.
And there's a lot of respect in the league for the Ohio State corner position.
I mean, I'm not going to complain if he comes back, but
I'm not going to complain either. And I mean, obviously that room goes from really good to like elite
right
level. I mean, real quick if that happens. But so I'm fine with the corners. The corners are a win in my opinion. I think where I'm concerned right now is I think I'm more concerned defensively than offensively, and that's been kind of the growing standard over the years that the defensive line. I think that they probably need to bring in another player or two. I kind of agree with that. Linebacker, there's a lot there, and I'm kind of like in the position that like, do they try to bring in somebody else or do they let these young guys play? And Cody Simon's coming back, so that's a boost. I'm happy about that. They did all right linebacker wise, I guess.
I do like the linebackers. I think Garrett Stover and Peyton Pierce are going to be good.
Yeah, I like them both.
They're more athletic guys than what we're looking for.
I think I would have liked at least one more guy. They were in on a few guys that they couldn't get, and obviously that is a lot more issues than just I mean, when they send out the recruitment best coaches in recruiting, and James Laurinaitis finishes above Parker Fleming, who's he can only make phone calls. He can only make phone calls. He can't even
talk
to
the kids on campus.
Yeah. So so if he's considered a better recruiter, that I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's a different show.
Where was Jim Knowles on that list?
He was actually decent, I thought.
Was he on there?
Yeah, he was on there.
Because I didn't remember seeing him.
He was above LJ. I know that.
Yeah, 44. Okay, I see him now. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, was Jim Knowles even listed on there? I'm like, he's still an assistant. But yeah. He was 44.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I liked, obviously, I do like the guys they brought in at.
They probably needed more safeties too, being a safety in defense.
Yeah. So they definitely need a couple more safeties. They probably. The only one I'm up in the air with is if they can find a good guy like the kid that they were after out of Louisiana that went to USC. If they can bring him in,
Curtis, that would be a pickup. Yeah.
Yeah. If they can bring somebody like that in, I think I would be okay with that. After that, I think they would. On defensively, I would concentrate more on the defensive line and the safety room in the portal, and let's see where the young guys can go. And maybe I don't know. maybe, just maybe, it'll be Laurinaitis kind of be more, even though he did do a lot of the on the field stuff this year, and but maybe letting him be more hands on with everything, that maybe he would be the linebacker will start getting a little bit more out of them. I don't know. I mean, obviously we're still kind of waiting on Steele and Tommy's decisions. I would like to see. I mean, no offense to either one of them. I like both of them as players. I think I'm at least ready to see one of the two go, if not both of them go, because I think that there's more athleticism below them, and I think the athleticism. Now, I don't know if there's more brains below them, and that's not saying anything bad against them, and the kids below them. We just have not seen it. And, there's field smarts, too, that Tommy has that makes up for some maybe athletic deficiencies that maybe some of the other kids have. But, what did Urban Meyer always say? If you're going, if you're the whole A to B, the 4 to 6 and all that stuff, like, he necessarily never cared if you made a mistake and you were going as hard as you could go. That was always his thing.
Going 1,000 miles an hour, like that's.
Yeah, and so I think I'm ready to see what some of those other guys can do, because I like what some of them can bring to the table. I like obviously I like CJ.
Sonny moved down.
Sonny moved down. I like Gabe. I think he's could be a real big time player in this. I like a couple of the new guys that they're bringing in. So
you never know what's the plan long term with Arvell Reese, with Mitchell Melton? Like, you got guys that can play edge, that can play linebacker.
Yeah.
Like, you got hybrid bodies. And like, thinking back, if either Steele or Tommy do come back, then I would almost rather Knowles' defense be a little bit more like 22 than 23, because those guys just sitting back reacting, something wasn't right. Like, when they attack, I thought they were fine. Like, in 22, I thought they were okay, because a lot of their assignments were kind of just to attack as soon as the ball was snapped, not so much read and react type stuff, where I think someone that's a little bit twitchier excels more in that, because they, as long as they can diagnose everything okay, they have the athleticism to make up for having to read the play first.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that stuff too. So yeah, I'm okay. I'm pretty good where they're at on defense. Obviously, Justin Scott, I would have loved to add him onto this one. I definitely.
Oh yeah.
We don't know what's going on with Tyreek. They definitely need another defensive tackle, though. I think even if Tyreek decides to come back, I think that they could use another defensive tackle somewhere in that room.
I don't think you're getting back all Tyreek, Mike Hall, and Ty Hamilton. So you need someone else.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of people feel JT's probably gone, but a lot of people feel that Jack's probably coming back, which I'm good with. I definitely could use the experience there. I really liked how Sawyer was playing towards the end of the season. And so I'm kind of looking forward to seeing that. You add in somebody like Edric Houston, which I think could be a playmaker right away next year. I think try to get him on the field. You still got Kenyatta coming back. Ken Curry's coming back. So I definitely think that they could maybe kind of get back to where they were. You think in years past with the edge rushers and stuff. I think maybe some of the philosophy on the defense has to change a little bit. I think the biggest thing with the defense, and I think they got better this year, they just got to keep on improving it on next year's. They got to continue to look for the identity. What is the identity? The identity is that the defensive line is just completely eating up all the offensive line, and the linebackers are making the plays and the safeties are making the plays? Or is the identity is that we're going to put the best defensive ends on the field, and they're going to, crush your quarterback if you get into 3rd and long, you're getting sacked. And,
Yeah. And that was the problem this year, man. There was no plan. Like, if you're just going to use 4 down linemen and you're not going to do anything with your linebackers, just leave them back to react, you got to win some battles with your defensive, or you at least got to eat up the blockers so they don't get to the next level. Yeah. Like, it just, this year was frustrating, because it was like, you were good enough to win it is just you didn't have a plan, and then teams that were able to run the ball could run the ball on you because your defensive line just I don't know, and maybe that's more on the linebackers than the line. I don't know. I mean, that's a discussion for another day, but yeah, you're exactly right though. You need to have an identity, have a plan. If it's eat up the offensive line so the linebackers can create chaos, fine. But if it's not, you got to get ways to win with your 4 down line.
Yeah. So that's definitely, going forward, they need to figure that out because, and I'm okay with either or. Yeah. I love the old school Ohio State defensive ends getting sacks and stuff like that. But if they just want to throw a bunch of big bodies in there and their job is to take out all 5 offensive linemen, and okay, I can live with that, but you need to have the athleticism and the skill set with the linebackers and the safeties to make sure that can happen. And, and if the goal is that, hey, we got the best corners in the world, so we need to have the best pass rusher defensive ends on the field because, that our corners can hold fort for, that second that they need to hold down the fort for. And, the defensive ends are going to go, be havoc going crazy on people, then I'm okay with that too. I don't care. It's just there needs to be more of a cohesiveness between LJ and Knowles. And I think, again, we'll talk about that as some of the coaching decisions start getting made and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, if this is Knowles' defense, it has to be Knowles' defense. So whatever, good or bad, whatever his philosophy is, needs to be what's implemented.
Right.
And,
it can't be in between 2 systems if it's not like it can't be 2 half-asses, like you got a full ass one thing. You can't half-ass 2 things. So no, I agree with that. And also like again, conversation for another day. Maximize your depth though, man. Like get the most out of kids. Just because someone might appear because you want someone playing at 300 and they're 320. What does it matter? Let them get in the 5 good snaps they can a game and then get someone else in there. I mean, Michigan can rotate 5 defensive tackles that are over 325 pounds. Like Ohio State could do the same.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that.
Someone give you 5 good snaps a game. Let them give you 5 good snaps a game and then get them out.
Yeah. Like you don't have to do a complete line change, a shift where like, we're putting all our backups in there. Like you can have, you can rotate 300 pounders with JT and Jack Sawyer still on the field. Like,
or rotate those guys down on pass rush situations, get out the tackles and bring in Kenyatta and Caden or something. I don't know, but yeah, again, conversation for another day. So, okay, you take us. So what's next?
Well, obviously that's next is transfer portal stuff. I mean, I think
what do you think is our biggest win right now for the recruiting class?
I think it's still
what room's the best? Receiver?
It's still receiver. And but corners, I think this is the first time in several years there's actually a position that kind of challenged the receivers. I like what they brought into the corner. So, I definitely like that. I definitely felt really good. I'm liking where the corner room's at. I mean, Tim Walton has done a lot of good things over the last couple of years, and it's kind of like I think that we're probably there now that with Taver not getting us anybody, and then all the Halfley, and then all the crap with Combs, and even though Combs did get us a couple guys, but there was just a lot of mess going on between him and Barnett back there, and that I think that we're finally between Tim Walton and Eliano that I think we finally have got. I mean, we need a little bit more depth in the safety room, but I think we're finally there that, the secondary is back to where it kind of needs to be depth wise, which, could use a couple pieces, but it's not like danger situation like it was a couple years ago.
And actual talent with the depth too. I mean, we are next year. I mean, we should be considered probably the best cornerback room in the country, even with Burke moving on.
Yeah. So
at least top 3.
No, you would think with how much Matthews played. I mean, if Hancock comes back between Matthews, Iggy, and Hancock, I mean that's pretty ferocious. Samson Hunt's gonna get he got some playing time this year. I mean, he was looking good. And then the kids that they've added, and they still have J.R. Brown left this year, right?
Yeah, they pretty much had total turnover there. I mean, Turner left, Jair Brown left, but Scott West, Lockhart, man, they got some studs coming in.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of my thoughts on signing day. I mean, we didn't want to go too overboard today. I think we're going to do
I would say biggest disappointment though would be defensive line recruiting.
I would think so.
You got a great
we averted an emergency. Like
we averted a disaster is what we
averted. There was a potential for a disaster.
But you still got to get, I mean, the way I look at it, and I know there's sometimes pieces leaving that dictate you got to recruit more or whatnot. If you employ 4 down defensive linemen each year, though, like if that's what you deploy, then you need to be able to recruit 4 defensive linemen a class. Like,
yeah,
I mean, am I wrong? Like, that's always just been my philosophy. Like, you should be getting 5 offensive linemen. You should be getting 4 defensive linemen. Of course, offensive linemen you can kind of stack over the year. So maybe only 4 in a class, which I believe we saw this year. We would have taken 5, though. I mean, they definitely would have taken Jordan Seaton had he said yes to them.
Yeah.
But you got to be able to get, I mean, 3 is an absolute minimum, but really you should be getting 4 a year defensive line.
Yeah. And if Ryan Day was pretty emphatic the other day in the press conference that yes, we are going to be aggressive in the portal. So
good.
If they are coming around a little bit more on that, and we've always said I don't think the Colorado philosophy works. Like you can't go say, hey, we're going to get 80 kids in the transfer portal, just have a complete roster turnover. No, that stuff doesn't work. Obviously the A&M stuff doesn't work. I think the Michigan stuff works though. You find where you get a couple plug and play offensive linemen every year, and then you also kind of develop the guys that you've recruited in. So, and they've had, since the transfer portal's begun, they've had a very solid to very good offensive line every year. And, and I think you could do that on the defensive lineman too. I don't need them to go bring 4 guys in. You sign 2 kids, go get 2 more kids. Right. And go get another tackle. You got some kids in the offensive line. You got some kids there that are developing and stuff like that. So obviously I want to see what those kids can do, but they can still use another offensive tackle. And, especially since I really do think Fryers could be really, really good down in the trenches and as a guard. And I just think that, as we saw this year a lot, he doesn't have a good first step. And
I hope they give Tagra a fair shot to win that position.
And not having a good first step is scary against defensive. I mean, that's the one thing, Simmons really impressed me as the year went on, that, it took him a minute to get going, but once he got into it, he actually has good footwork. And, he's actually, defensive ends did not get around him as easily as they got around Fryer. And so
much quicker than Fryer.
And so, I definitely, and I think that's probably why he's always been, probably a little, offsides prone, because
the false starts.
False starts.
Mountain West are too quick on their blowing the whistle as well.
Yes. I think he's probably, I think he's just really fast, and he has sometimes he's just a little too fast. You see it with other players and stuff like that. It's just, I think he's got good footwork. He's got a good good technique and stuff like that. Yeah. He's just sometimes a tad too fast when he goes to employ it. But yeah, I'm fine with him. I just think they need somebody on the other side of him now. And, maybe that's Montgomery, but they still need to bring somebody in to challenge that position.
And just give good depth to the room too.
Yeah. So, yeah, they definitely need to work on the defensive line. That's And I know there's other stuff to get into with that stuff, but they do need to have some sort of plan going forward of how that room is going to eventually get addressed with the coaching staff. Because I do think it is starting to affect them a little bit. That people are getting nervous that LJ could retire at any moment, so they kind of have to have some sort of and I don't know what that is. That if you can get a big time defensive line coach in here and say, hey, you're going to be an analyst for a year and learn under LJ for a year and you're taking over, that might not be a bad thing. It could work the other way too, where maybe they say, hey, LJ, would you like to be an analyst for a year or two? And let's bring in an understudy, somebody that's going to take over the position at the defensive line coach. And you're basically going to mentor him, but he's going to do the recruiting and all that stuff. You're going to help out here on campus with the recruiting. And, we're going to turn it over to him. But will you stay another year, 2 years to get him up to that level to where he needs to be?
Or, all prayers can be answered. The NCAA can give an extra assistant coach in the offseason. We could just throw a pile of money at someone else to get them in here, and they can learn with LJ while both can be on the road and everything like that.
Yeah, I would like that too.
That would be nice. That would be that
would be nice. All right. Well, I do think we'll do another. We will do another show before the bowl game. So we will get a bowl game show in next week at some point. But I think we'll call it a day on this one. We'll wrap up the signing day stuff. Obviously, we'll see more kids most likely come in the transfer portal, and we will have another exodus. I don't know how many, but we will lose probably a few more kids.
Yeah, that's all, and that's all end of the season stuff. We'll talk about who all's going.
Yeah. So. Wanted to wish everybody Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, and we will talk to everybody next week. So let's get on out of here.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for stopping in today to the Buckeye Bar. I'm John.
And I'm Mike.
OH.
IO.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's Buckeye Bar Guys on Buckeye Bar Talk. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that all notifications bell so you see when new content is added. And please remember to like and share so we can grow our audience. Don't be afraid to comment. We want to know what you're thinking and we want to know what content to add for you guys. OH.
IO.